Hi, this is Geshe Michael, and we're continuing our Tibetan translator training classes. So far, we've covered all the possible pronunciations of Tibetan, and having been through the video courses up to date, the small video segments, you should be able to pronounce any Tibetan. Good news for you is that Tibetan scriptures talking about sutras that were written 2,500 years ago, or a newspaper written yesterday, the pronunciation is the same. Okay, you can pronounce, if you can pronounce the Heart Sutra, you can pronounce a newspaper written yesterday. Pronunciation is the same. That's really good news. When that Aprilia with the Shora Sota, the Droktav March at Persa Terrota and Bada de Veriven in Swishlakur, of which we are doing Gender is the Flur. Like that's Chaucer, okay, and it don't sound like modern English, but you can read, you can pronounce. If you can pronounce a newspaper, you can pronounce the Heart Sutra from 2,500 years ago. That's the good news. So you've covered it. You can pronounce anything. I expect you pronounce everything correctly from now on. The only exception is that there is Sanskrit words written with Tibetan letters, and they will trip you up. So I thought I would do 2 short video segments about Sanskrit written with Tibetan letters. And you know, it's just to give you a taste for what might happen. I want you, the only goal of these 2 small segments is that by the time you finish them, you can recognize when you're in Tibetanized Sanskrit and you don't freak out and you know what to do. Okay, so it's not to teach you all of the pronunciation of Sanskrit, which is a vast subject and which is not pronounced correctly by anybody I know, except me. Sorry. So anyway, I'm going to give you some basic presentations about Sanskrit in Tibetan letters. And then at least you will know when you've hit a mantra or you've hit a Sanskrit title in Tibetan, and you know pretty much what to do, because it breaks all the rules that you've learned so far about how to pronounce Tibetan and how to show Tibetan. So to get you some examples, what I did was I turned on our database, our Tibetan library that has, I don't know, 500,000 pages in it. I went to the Kangyur and I typed in Gyagar Kedu, which means in the language of India, okay, which is how every sutra and every shastra starts, you know, in the language of India, and they give you the Sanskrit title. So if I wanted to give you a pile of important Sanskrit, I could just go take titles from the Kangyur. So I went to the Kangyur, I typed in, you know, in the language of India, and I got like 6 or 7 examples for you. So let's go through those. You'll get a feel for when you hit Sanskrit in Tibetan letters, and you'll start to get a feeling of why it's not pronounced the way other Tibetan is, okay? So the first thing I hit, I ended up in the stotra, or the stava section, which is tupa in Tibetan, which means the collection of praises. These are songs of praise, eulogies written to high lamas or great gurus of the past or saints. And this is a whole section in the Kangyur and Tengyur called tupa, mainly in the Tengyur, called tupa, okay? So I'm going to just give you a few examples, and I wrote them down for you, okay? And you'll start to be aware of some of the pitfalls of this subject. Okay, so pronounce it. I mean, you can't pronounce it. According to what we studied so far, it cannot be pronounced. It would be something like bi, shi. We have never had this before. And then ta, ba. It would be something like bi, shi, something, ta, ba. Okay? Now, because it's Sanskrit written in Tibetan letters, what this is say vishi, shta. You turn your tongue back. This is retroflex. These 2 dots represent a retroflex. Means retro means back, flex means bent, like flexed foot, right? So this is a non-retroflex sha. This is sha, and this is sha. And we don't have it in Tibetan, okay? Say vishe, sta, stava, okay? Vishishta, stava, okay? Stava means a praise. It comes from a root stu, to praise somebody. Vishishta means kirpadu pakpa, which means special, super special, okay? So, what do we notice from the how are we going to pronounce the the Tibetan here, Tibetan letters? One thing we notice is that B changes to V, okay? So this was B, okay? B. Unfortunately, B is also, to show a B in Sanskrit, you also use this letter, okay? So you have to know Sanskrit to know how to pronounce it, okay? Because why didn't they just use a Tibetan V? There is no Tibetan V. Okay, get used to it, all right? So when the Tibetans hit a V in Sanskrit, which is va, right? They just used a B, okay? Because they didn't have any other letter. So you have to know what it says before you can pronounce it, which is bad news, okay? This could have been Bishishta, but you don't know, okay? Unless you know Sanskrit, you don't know how to pronounce it, okay? So you're going to get in trouble when you hit Sanskrit, okay? The, she. Now, there's how many rows in Tibetan? Kachatabatsa, right? Kachatabatsa, and then 2 more. So you got 7.5 rows, 30 letters, 7.5 rows of 4 per row. So you have 30 letters, 30 consonants in Tibetan. We don't have this retroflex row in Tibetan. In Sanskrit, it comes between cha and ta. Kachatabatsa in Sanskrit would be kachatabatsa. Okay? There would be a retroflex dental row. Ta, say it, ta, 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 da. That's also in Sanskrit. And na, like bandita or mandala. Okay? So those would be retroflex. Okay? Not mandala and pandita. Okay? Pandita. Not hatha yoga, but hatha. Hatha yoga. Okay? Not hatha yoga. Okay? So this, to achieve a retroflex in Tibetan, you reverse the letter. Okay? You just turn it around, which is kind of cool. It's a cool idea. So this is sha, and this is sha, 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 sha. Okay? That's all. When you want to retroflex a Tibetan letter and make it retroflex, you just flip it. Okay? It's kind of cute. It's kind of cool. All right? Vishishta. So Vishishta means very special or extraordinary. And then now, in normal Tibetan, this would be, Jor look it for me. Sa, ta, tak, ta. Okay? So please say sa, ta, tak, ta. If I take a sa and I join a ta below it, I get ta. Okay? Now, this is not Tibetan, this is Sanskrit. So it's sa, ta, sta. Okay? Now it's Vishishta, stava. And you pronounce the head letter. Okay? So you've got to know Sanskrit to be able to pronounce Tibetan correctly. By the way, Tibetans don't. They have no idea what to say. They will say Bishishta, Bishishti. They have no idea. Taba probably. Okay. Now you already know why this is a V, because they didn't have a V and they used a B. Okay. Vishishta. Staba. Say Vishishta. No, sorry. Vishishta. Don't turn your tongue back till the second sha, right? Vishishta stava. Okay. Got it? So you're not going to know how to pronounce that until you know how to pronounce it. By the way, that's the way English is. Sorry for that. I'm going to give you 2 more examples, and then we'll stop for the night, okay? So have hope. I'm sorry we're going late. That's okay. No yawning. I'm older than all of you guys. Okay. So it's all illegal in normal Tibetan. You can't pronounce it. This should be sa, this should be ba, there should be a dot. You never get this combination in Tibetan. This should be a silent spelling changer for differences like tsa and sa, meaning root and grass, respectively. And then this should be a to, and this would be something like ta, ta. Okay, say ta. Right? Okay, I mean, it's all, now the pronunciation changes in Sanskrit, okay? So, this B, I'll give you a clue, is a V, and we did one today in yoga class. Sarva. Yeah, sarva, okay? So this part is sarva, meaning all, right? Sarvangasana means you use all your limbs, suppose anga. So sarva. Now, this is a very interesting thing. And it justifies the way I pronounce Sanskrit for you guys. The Tibetans, when they hit the second row in Sanskrit, which is what? Cha 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 nya. Okay? Cha 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 nya. Say cha. Cha cha nya. When they hit the second row in Sanskrit, they didn't use the second row of their own alphabet. They dropped down to Chatabatsa, the fifth row. Okay? They chose the fifth row to represent the second row in Sanskrit. Okay? So instead of saying bodhicitta, they wrote bodhicitta. Citta. Instead of saying king as Raja, they said Raja. Okay? It means 1,000 years ago, when Buddhism entered Tibet from probably West Bengal, they pronounced the things differently, and they didn't say, for example, wisdom wasn't jnana, okay? Or as it's mispronounced in India nowadays, gnana, or something like that, like banana, I don't know. It was pronounced properly, which was jnana, say jnana. Okay, what's the Russian for I know? Znayo. Russian comes more directly from Sanskrit, okay? The correct pronunciation is znya. And the Tibetans understood that. When I showed this to my Sanskrit teacher, he was very excited. He said, I always thought it was pronounced that way. You know, he always pronounced it that way. But he didn't have like big proof for it, except for poetry where they had to make similar sounds. So he was very excited to see the word I know. Okay, znye or znyana, okay? And that explains the K in English or the G in Gnostic comes from this znya, okay? So this means to know, znye, okay? Sarva, if you're gonna do it in normal, you know, diacritics, Sanskrit diacritics, sarva znye, okay? But pronounced properly is nye, okay? Sarva is nye. Then this is okay, ma is ma. Maha means big. But when it meets Ishvara, it becomes A. A means I becomes E. Maheshvara. Say Maheshvara. Okay, so this is a combination of two words, Maha and Ishvara, okay? What do we learn from this? This orthographic va in Sanskrit. We said Tibetan didn't have a va, but it has a piece of a letter called a wasur or a asur. There's a debate, right? This they use to represent a v when it's connected to a Sanskrit letter, shva. I say Maheshvara, okay? Maheshvara. All right, so this means Wangchuk Chembo in Tibetan, the great Lord. Okay, Maheshvara. Then the S, you know, is pronounced sto, and then the ratak on a dental no longer is a ra. It's no longer a retroflex dental. You pronounce the whole thing, stotram. Okay, say stotram. You don't say stotram. Okay, stotram, stotram. And then sometimes this is the anuswar, I think it's called. This is a ma, right? Stotram, which is a case ending. It shouldn't even be on there, maybe. Okay, stotram. So stotram means a praise of the great Lord, who knows all things. The all-knowing great Lord. Why this is an E is a long story. I'm not going to go into it. Okay. But it's a common variant in Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit. Okay. Now let's do one more example and we're done for the night. And then I'll give you part 2 of Sanskrit in Tibetan. Again, the goal is not to what? Teach you. I'm not going to teach you every possible combination. I just want you to feel when you hit some Sanskrit and you know it's not going to obey the rules. Okay, here we go. One last example and then we'll stop for tonight. Oops, sorry. All right. Guess what this is? The first 2 syllables. Deva. Okay, Deva. All right. Means what? Angel. Yeah, angel or God. Okay. But we just said if you wanted a V, you would use a Tibetan ba. B, ba. You can use either one. Okay. So now you have real problems. Okay? V could be a B, or V could be a W. B could be a V, W could be a V, or W could be a W. You have to know the word before you can pronounce it correctly. Okay? Sorry. Okay? Got that? The V can be written either with a B or with a W. Okay? Bad news. Or with an asur. Okay? 3 choices for a V. All right? So get used to it. Okay? So Deva you know. Deva you know. I think you know this word. Yeah, Atisha, okay, which is in Tibetan is two translations, Punsok or Pultuchua, and they mean the same thing. Punsok, which is a name of a friend of ours, there's monk name. Punsum Tsokpa, it's a short form of Punsum Tsokpa, or Pultuchua, which can be shortened to Pulchum, and they both mean excellent or amazing or wonderful or like that. Okay, this is just a adjectival ending, aya. So atishaya means wondrous, okay? Atishaya. And Atisha, Lord Atisha, Atisha means amazing or wonderful or excellent, okay? Atishaya is just another form of that word, Atishaya, okay? So this, here it means actually more wonderful than Atishaya, more exceedingly wonderful than, okay? This you already had, and so you're going to give it to me. Stotra. Stotra. Okay, not tra. Okay? If it's Tibetan, it's tra. If it's Sanskrit in Tibetan letter, it's tra. Stotra. Okay? If you want a real mess up, think about what it is in English. It's a second row. Ka-cha. Cha. T-R in English before you is truck. Truck. It's not truck. It's not even truck. It's truck. It totally breaks all the rules. Why is it CH? God knows. Okay? You never thought about it because you grew up speaking English. Okay? But try it when you're a foreigner and you sit TR, UCK, and your teacher says, that's cha, truck. You're like, what do you mean cha? It's T. It should be truck. Okay, all those Russians are right. Don't try to trick me. Okay. Okay. All right. This one you actually know if you think about it. Yeah, and then we'll finish for the night. You tell me where tika is. Tika. Now this is a real Sanskrit retroflex. You turned around the ta, right? So ta becomes tra, ta, ta. What's a tika? Do you know? It means a commentary, like pramana vartika. Pramana vartika. Okay. It's a commentary on valid perception. Pramana vartika. Okay, so tika means a commentary, okay? And it's a loan word in Tibetan. They'll say tik, tik, okay? And it means and if you care, which you don't, but I don't care if you don't care, these kind of words that start with a retroflex represent the old Dravidian culture of India before the Aryans moved in. So the languages spoken down in South India will have a lot of, this is a sign that this is an ancient word from the original people of India before the Persians or whoever they were moved in the north and were called Aryans, which means superior people. I don't know how many years ago, 5,000 years ago, longer. They pushed the darker people down to the South India, and they spoke a different language, which wasn't related to, it wasn't the same as Sanskrit, and it had a lot of initial retroflexes in it. So this is probably a Dravidian word, okay? Tika, and those, someday you can get into that. Nagarjuna was from there, for example. So tika. There's only one more thing I want to show you about this, is that how do Tibetans indicate a long I in Sanskrit? You see, this would be a short I in Sanskrit, okay? This would be tika, and this is tika, 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 tika. Okay, I and E. We call a short E and a long E, right? Or sorry, short I and a long E, okay, in English. Okay, tika, which is not a word, and tika, tika. So when you draw the I vowel in Sanskrit behind the first letter, it means short I. And when you draw it on the right side, it means a long I. Okay, that's the difference between a short I and a long I in Sanskrit. What are you going to do in Tibetan to indicate a long I when you don't have an extra vowel for I? You put an achung at the bottom. Okay, any long letter. So pronounce this for me. You thought you were going home. Pronounce this for me. Okay, Arya, Acharya, okay, like that. What's a nice pronunciation people do? There's one word that really irritates me. Anyway, if it's a long A, you got to say a long A. If you say like asana, okay, but that's another story. I forget the example, but it drives me nuts. Anyway, I can't remember. Anyway, this is a ah sound without the long mark. By the way, in a Sanskrit word starting with ka, it would be ka. That's a long A. What's a short A is nothing. Okay, every letter has its own short A. Ka, ka, say ka, ka. This is equivalent really to a short U in English. I cut my finger. And this is equivalent to a, I don't know what, AH in English, okay? Maybe it's namaste, I don't remember. No, there's something else. Avidya. Avidya would mean supreme knowing. Avidya would mean ignorance. Something like that. There's some word that yoga teaches you. Drives me crazy. That's it. Yeah. Ananda means the person who's unhappy. Ananda means the person who's supremely happy. An initial long A means very much. An initial short A means not at all. So when they say Ananda, it drives me crazy. Nand means to be happy. Ananda means to be very happy. Ananda means I'm very unhappy. Okay, just like that, you got to be careful with Sanskrit, okay? And people mispronounce it all the time. Amitabha means, anyway, Amitabha means immeasurable light. Not measurable, mita, bha, light, as in photon from the Greek. But that's another story. Okay, so anyway, I've given you 3 examples of titles. I think they're from the Tengyur. Just to show you that what it feels like when you hit suddenly Sanskrit. And it'll be noticeable. There'll be weird stacks of letters and things you haven't seen before. And then you gotta think that there's a possibility that you just hit a patch of Sanskrit. And you may not be able to pronounce it correctly unless you learn Sanskrit. Okay, Sanskrita, Sanskrita. Okay, Sanskrita, say Sanskrita. Amrita. Okay, it's a vocalic R, not Amrita. Amrita? That doesn't have any meaning at all in Sanskrit. There's no such word, okay? So anyway, now you know when you hit Sanskrit that you're in Sanskrit, and then maybe later, if we have nothing to do, we can learn the correct pronunciation of all the titles in the Kangyur or something. Just because that's a pretty representative case of Sanskrita. By the way, this combination here is illegal in modern Sanskrit. Okay? When an A meets an A, what's supposed to happen?
Long A.
Yeah, long A. Deva ends in A. Atisha starts in A. It should have been written Devatisha. Devatisha. Okay? And then you got to get into what's called Buddhist hybrid Sanskrit. And there are slightly different rules for Buddhist Sanskrit than there are for classical Panini Sanskrit. Okay? And that's a whole nother subject, which we'll cover in another class about 100 years from now. Good night, and thank you for coming. See you in our next class. Next class, we'll do maybe 3 more titles in Sanskrit, just to get a feeling for it, and then we'll move on. We'll move on to the basic particles of Tibetan that are covered in the short Tibetan memorizable grammar texts, like dung, xing, and ching, and dung. All words for and, for example. And they're used in different places. And we have to, our next job is to start to learn particles. And then after that, we'll learn vocabulary, and after that, we'll learn syntax, and after that, we'll be able to read simple sentences. Okay, good night.